You're listening to Panthers on Tap. I'm Curtis Rauen, joined by Bryson Carbley. We're just two fans sharing our love for the game in Carolina Panthers football. So join us, crack open a cold one, some bubbly, a little wine, some scotch. We don't care, whatever makes you sleep better at night. Before we dive into the episode, a little self-promotion. Stop what you're doing. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers on Tap. Join the discussion on our Facebook group. We have over 2,500 members. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcast. Just search Panthers on Tap. Get your paper bags out. The Carolina Panthers have fallen to 1-7 on the year. Things have gotten really rough here in the Carolinas. I appreciate everyone tuning in with us. We're recording this on a Tuesday night. Panthers got a game in 2 days against the Bears in the Toilet Bowl. Has the night off, so he'll return next week, so don't worry about that. But we do got some guests with us, as you guys can see tonight. Kevin Avery from the Four-Man Rush and JJ Hardy, known as Panthers Culture, on Twitter. Guys, it's good to have both of you back.
Pleasure to be back, man.
Always fun to be invited here.
I know it's depressing times, but I want to start with Bryce Young in this game. And I'll start off with JJ. What did you think of his performance on Sunday, or lack thereof?
It was disappointing. It was disappointing from the perspective of watching last week's performance versus the Texans. I thought that was his best game, and I was looking forward to him building on that game, like stacking good performances, and to come out against the Colts, which up to that point hadn't been a good defense. I just felt like the two pick sixes that he threw were the difference in the game. And I know he's a rookie. I know that we're going to have to go through some bumps and bruises for this rookie year. But the thing about Bryce, and I think I may have said this the last time we were on here making predictions for him, I always felt like he would be a guy that wouldn't make a lot of mistakes. And I didn't expect crazy numbers, anything like that from him this rookie year. But I really didn't anticipate that he would turn the ball over as frequently as he has. And so I'm always disappointed when any quarterback doesn't protect the football. That first interception, where he came back, to try to get the ball to the running back, and Rodgers was waiting on it. It was a backbreaker, to toss up that screen pass to Miles Sanders and miss it the way he did. That led to a second pick six. To me, I really lost a lot of motivation to watch the game after that. But I stayed on, but it just I was disappointed. So I won't keep talking about it, but it was a disappointing performance. Even though he's a rookie, I still was disappointed in the decisions that he made, because I felt like both of those throws, it was 3 total interceptions. I kind of don't care about the third one as much as the previous 2. I just felt like those first 2 pick sixes were backbreakers, and to me, that was a winnable game that we lost because of Bryce Young. I hate to say that.
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. I tweeted, and I hate to put it on one guy, but I had tweeted, I think, towards the end of the game, and I'm like, I mean, it's on Bryce Young. Like, and I hate to admit that, but you gotta kind of pony up when things are going good and when they're going bad. And, I love Bryce Young to death, and I'm glad the Panthers drafted him, but I mean, it was a bad game. Like, he played like shit. And when you give up 2 touchdowns to the defense, and I get, his offensive line isn't giving him any help, and he might not have the separation or speed with his weapons, but I think both can be true. Yeah, both can be true. I think the offensive line didn't play up to par, and I also think Bryce Young did not make very good decisions in this game. And I know I'm not. I don't say I'm happy that you mentioned it, but I remember in the early, we had you guys on right before the season. We were doing those projections, and man, every one of you guys, and I get it, but like every one of you guys had Bryce Young with the low numbers. I think I was the only one in the double digits. I hate that I was right about that, but I just felt like this team at that point is just with the injuries and the offensive line shuffling around, just they weren't going to be ready for this start of this year. And it's obviously way worse than I would have even ever imagined. I don't think any fan would have predicted this start to the year. But Kevin, I want to get your take on Bryce Young in this game and just really his 7 games we've seen of him.
Yeah, as far as before I get to his performance of Sunday, as far as his overall performance starting from week 1 at Atlanta up until this past Sunday, Bryce Young had been steadily improving in spite of all circumstances. I think a lot of fans, we get caught up in the moment, whether they're good moments or bad moments, and we got to realize that this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. Games like this, every great quarterback early in his career had games like this. So when we're talking, we're only midway through, and people want to use this game as the albatross to put around his neck. Oh, told you made the wrong choice, and this, that, and the third. I just laugh it off because, like I said, people get caught up in the moment. Now, with me being there at the game Sunday, I could definitely say that, it was not his best game. I look at the fact we had 5 drops that game. That doesn't help because no matter how great of a quarterback that he was perceived to be, he's still a rookie. That NFL speed is different. Me personally, I was wondering, was Frank Wright back calling plays? Because that first half was as lethargic as it gets with the play calling. We're talking about an Indianapolis Colts defense that the last 3 games prior to us gave up at least 37 points easily. And we end up managing only 13. And for me, the play calling in the first half was just very lethargic. It's almost like we're almost scared to be aggressive on offense. Now, when you look at the play of the, as you mentioned, the offensive line, I mean, the Panthers offensive line give up the most quarterback hits in the NFL. With so many concerns about Bryce Young's size and things like that, this was the last category I would ever expect us to be. I don't know if you want to say first in with quarterback hits or last in with protection, however you want to look at it. But for me, to me, it was just a rookie quarterback having a bad game. I don't think this moment will define. And matter of fact, I want to see how he bounces back after that, because we have to look at Bryce Young's career as a whole. He was highly successful in high school, in California. He was highly successful in college. This is his first real time really being truly in adverse football situations. So I'm curious to see how he's going to come back on a short week on the road. That's going to be a hostile environment to see how he responds. But make no mistakes about it, he made some mistakes. The defense played their butt off. I mean, they held the Colts up under 200 yards, held Jonathan Taylor in the running game to less than 80 yards because their running game had been pretty solid up until then. Ever since we dropped them back-to-back 40-point games to Detroit and Miami before the bye, we've given up 13 and 14 points in our 2 home games since the bye. So, if nothing else, the defense has definitely improved since the bye. But as far as with Bryce Young, for me, it was an ugly game, but I'm curious to see how he bounces back from it.
Kevin, I want to stick with you here because I know your guys' crew, the 4-man rush, and you guys are heavily involved with just breaking down offense. I just wanted to get your take on that group because obviously they haven't played up to par to this point. Do you think there's anything not necessarily this week, obviously, because it's a short week, but is there anything they can do to switch this thing up to either get some other guys in there and try to change things up to, so we can see more improvement? You see anything there? And I'm going to share these PFF numbers while we're talking about it because, like you said, 4 sacks given up. There was a couple penalties. Obviously, this team this week was not clean when it comes to flags. I mean, those refs were throwing them left and right in this one. But just offensive line overall, what are your thoughts on it? And do you think Panthers need to make some changes as these weeks go on with just grouping and personnel? You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. Far as the lineup goes, yeah, thanks. Far as the lineup goes, obviously the revolving door at left guard is my biggest current concern. Calvin Throckmorton, he played marginally better at right guard than left guard, but obviously with Austin Corbett coming back and showing some rust and showing some moments of flashiness, he was going to take back over that right guard spot. With the other options, we've had Cade Mays play at left guard as well. Personally, I wouldn't have mind seeing more of Ryan Jensen get some snaps because for 3 games in a row, Calvin Throckmorton has just, when he's played since replacing Zavala at left guard, he's been just as bad, if not slightly worse, from my personal assessment. As far as the rest of the line goes, for all the, he's a bust for Icky. As you see here, he had a pretty solid, good game in his crickets. Everybody want to be quick to have so much to say when he has a bad game, but then when he has a solid, efficient game, I mean, when the last time you seen a Panther offensive lineman grade out of the 88? And again, you can take it for what it's worth because it is PFF, but that type of, run blocking, you get crickets, nobody's saying anything. Pass blocking, slight improvement. It wasn't, because I think he graded it like in a 35 the last game. Bradley Bozeman, he does okay. I still think he gives up too much initial pressure being directly in front of Bryce Young. But overall, if you look at these numbers, had a decent game. Austin Corbett, I could tell he's trying to get his legs back under him. He was known more as a pass blocker and not as much as a run blocker. But since he's come back from injury, he's actually been a better run blocker than pass blocking. But a lot of that coming back from the type of injury he just got to get his legs in playing shape. So he's been real shaky with his pass blocking since coming back. But I just think that's just getting off the rust, playing on a short week. See how his legs hold up. I like to see how his legs look when we play after this game, when we had the 10 days off for Dallas, when he gets a chance to maybe finally, get them under par. Taylor Moton, he's usually Mr. Consistency when it comes to pass blocking. He usually grades in the high 70s and 80s. He gave up 9 quarterback pressures. That's a lot. Now, he didn't give up a sack or a hit, but, again, the Panthers offensive line, when it comes to quarterback hits and hurries, we're giving up the most in both categories. So, we're not doing Bryce Young any favors with that. But for me, if I had to make a change, I would either try either Cade Mays or Jensen at left guard because Throckmorton is just not getting the job done.
What was with that pick? I mean, I think you guys have all seen it by now. The picture of, I think it was the Colts. I mean, they sent the house on Bryce, and you had the linemen all chasing literally the defenders as Bryce Young clobber about 6 white jerseys, and then you had offensive linemen, double team one guy. What's up with the offensive season so far?
Yeah, on that particular play, they sent 7. We only had the 5 offensive linemen, and I think Chuba Hubbard was in the block, and it looked like only Chuba Hubbard was the only one to maintain his block. That was very.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hello?
I think he's a little delayed, Kevin.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, we're having some connection. I hear you, Kevin.
Oh, okay. But dang, lost my train of thought. Just that quick. What was your question again?
Kevin, he's falling off.
I see. He's having connection issues.
The only thing I could make out from where he was asking was, the picture of like all of our offensive linemen chasing their defensive linemen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that was like I think it was 7 versus 6, but our 5 looked completely lost. And again, this was a Colts defensive line that were bottom 5, and we made them look like they were a formidable front. Just like we did the week before with the Houston Texans. Right. They were last in the league in sacks. I think they came in with only 5 sacks, and they ended up getting 6 in one game against us. Like, we continue to get other people contract extensions. All they got to do is throw in film against the Panthers, when they're at the negotiating table to justify, why they need this, contract extension. So it's crazy.
Yeah, man, it's crazy because I was talking about the matchup, before the game, and I was on the radio last Thursday before the game, and my thoughts were that because they couldn't rush the passer, and that had been really our Achilles heel when it came to, having successful drives, like drives dying, once we get in the red zone and have to settle for field goals. I really felt like this would be an opportunity for Bryce to have time, to be able to, make his reads, be accurate across the middle of the field, all that stuff. And I think it was like the first or second drop back, and DeForest Buckner was in the backfield, like in less than a second. And that particular attempt, I think he blew past Throckmorton or Bozeman. And then later in the drive, they lined him up over Icky, and he beat Icky pretty bad too. And I don't think Icky gave up the sack. I can't remember, but either way, it just looked like, oh God, like they have already exploited the vulnerabilities on our offensive line. It's like they know for sure where to apply pressure every week. It's not like Moton and now that Corbett is back, I know that, he isn't like in tip-top shape yet. But it's not like the teams are beating that right side anymore, right? Because in the beginning of the season, I think it was Cade Mays in week 1, and then in week 2 it was Throckmorton, and then they moved the other guy, I don't know if it was Mays to the left side, and then Zavala came in and played, I think left guard, and so it looked like in the first few weeks they were exploiting both guard positions. Now that Corbett is back, I don't see the right side being exploited as much as it was in the preseason and the first few games. Now it seems like teams are attacking vertically right in that between the center and the left guard, or obviously like the Texans game, like they're just getting Icky on the island and beating him, which is a compound situation because sometimes Icky has gotten beat straight up, and then other times there's just nobody open, for Bryce to get the ball to. He ends up taking a coverage sack, but either way, that left side, the center, left guard, left tackle, has been an issue at some point in each game that we played. And it's I think you said this when you first started talking about the line. When we drafted Bryce Young, and it didn't matter who we drafted, but when we drafted Bryce Young, I felt like protection of him would be paramount, just because of the concerns they had about size, the concerns they had about his durability at the NFL level. Nobody knew if he could withstand punishment, and I just felt like there's no way they're going to bring that guy here and not have a great plan.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you back, bro. We tried to hold down.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Got back, but I was in the middle of talking to Kevin about the offensive line issues. He had finished his point, that you were asking about, that we believe that you were asking about, and I was just saying, and I'll wrap it up since you're back. But I was saying I'm most disappointed overall in this great coaching staff's lack of preparation to protect the prize jewel in Bryce Young. When we drafted Bryce, I hope that they had a great plan, scheme, whatever you want to call it, to protect him, because there were so many issues, or not issues, but so many concerns regarding his size or lack thereof, his durability at the NFL level, and to see how vulnerable we have been in every game this year is really, really, really concerning going forward, because I don't think that we can fix it. No, definitely can't fix it this year. And I don't know how easy it would be able to be fixed even in the offseason, when you consider that we don't have a lot of draft capital to improve the offensive line. I personally believe that we need to replace two positions on the offensive line. And I know this is going to be a little bit controversial, but when I consider the fact that, and we've heard Thomas Brown say that we are a zone blocking team now, I'm not sure that Bradley Bozeman is a zone blocking center. But I don't have to delve too far into that. I think left guard is an issue that we have to address. I don't think we have a zone blocking left guard unless Brady Christensen can come back healthy and be that. I'm not sure about him in that role. And I love Ike Ekwonu as a player. I'm trying to figure out if he's going to be comfortable being the left guard of the future. And I hope that he is. I just don't know if the zone blocking scheme that we currently deploy under this staff is the right fit for him. So I think two of those positions, two of those players potentially should be replaced. Not Icky. I think he has a home regardless on that offensive line, but I just think that two of those players need to be replaced, and it could be some shuffling just depending on what you can get. But again, I just don't think it's a quick fix. But I end it because I know that you're getting back on, Curtis, and get back on schedule with the show.
No, you're good. I'm glad you guys kept it rolling. I wanted to stick with the offense, and then we'll kind of transition over to the defense here. But I think Mike Kay asked Frank Reich about this, and he didn't really delve into much. But I wanted to get your guys' take on this up to this point, 8 games into this season with the bye. What is this Panthers offensive identity to you? Like, and I don't know if there's an answer to that. I don't really know what the proper way to kind of delve into that, because I don't know if there really is one. But I'm just curious to get your guys' take on that and what you kind of envisioned, if there isn't one, of what this team was supposed to look like as we sit here at 1-7. Kevin?
Okay, before I get in that, just give me 20 seconds to respond to what JJ just said. First, Bozeman is a power gap blocker. Icky is a power gap blocker. When healthy, Christensen is a zone blocker. Corbett is a zone blocker, and Moten is a zone blocker. So 3 of the 5 positions on the offensive line, we have zone blockers and 2 positions, and I think the most 2 important positions we have power gap blockers. So that would be the answer to your first question about what's the strength or identity of our offensive line. And the second thing is Mike. Y'all remember Mike Wall, right?
Yeah.
He tagged me because he, me and him chat on and off, and I had him on a couple of weeks ago for an interview about Icky. He's like, he strongly sees Icky being fine at left tackle. He said Icky has been getting by so much on his athleticism. Nobody has really coached and drilled him on his technique. He said Icky's inconsistency with his footwork is what's messing him up. He said Icky will take the right step, have the right hand placement, but when his footwork is inconsistent, that's where he gets in the most trouble at. But he said that is fixable, but that takes a lot more coaching and drilling than probably what he's done or getting. Now, y'all remember Hall of Fame Willie Anderson?
Yeah.
Played for the Bengals. Yeah, we speak to him on and off as well, especially him and Big Smooth. He reached out to us actually and wanted to know how to about. Well, we actually asked him about the offense line of Icky. He said, I've been trying to get in touch with him, but don't know, can't find his tag. And so we gave him Icky's tag. He said he was going to try to reach out and inbox him to see come this off season if he would be interested in working with him. Because so apparently the gurus, they feel like Icky's is fixable. It's just going to take Icky having a desire to work with these guys and then put in the time for it, because they feel like his athleticism and his power, there's no question about. But if we can get his footwork fixed, he'll be fine. Because to talk about putting him at left guard, when you have guard, you're in a tight space, and if your footwork is not right at tackle, or you have more room, you're going to be even less effective at guard. So the talk of moving Icky possibly to guard is really a non-factor. Many of the offensive line, people have said that'll make his problems even worse because of his footwork. So
and what the hell is going on with James Campen? I mean, isn't he sufficient enough to? He's supposed to be. This goes back, and we're gonna talk about this later. This all-star staff, and this guy's supposed to be the renowned, O-line coach in the NFL. Everyone talks about him. It's been well documented. And we're talking about this guy, guys that are on Twitter and Mike Wall. And I'm not just saying guys on Twitter because I know Mike Wall, he's been in the Pro Bowl, All Pro. The guy is a hell of a player for both the Packers and Panthers. But how can Campen fix this guy? I don't get it.
Well, again, it goes back to the breakdown of the type of players we got and the type of scheme. If we're going to be exclusively zone, we at the 2 main positions, the most important position on the offensive line is center and left tackle. We got gap power guys that like to line up and tee off. When we had that late season push last year under interim coach Steve Wilkes, that's what we started running more of. Was power gap run schemes that protected us. The pass blocking because we were so run heavy, the run action that we used off of play action started off looking like a run, which our offensive line was comfortable with doing. And that's why you wasn't seeing Darnold when he had his late season push and playing well, not getting a lot of pressure. So a lot of it has to do with Coach Wright bringing in this zone. It's really an inside zone heavy scheme run game wise, which is one of the reasons why Miles Sanders has kind of struggled too, because it's different than what he ran in Philly. That's really we're really trying to put squares in a round hole, and I think that's a lot of reasons for it. Now, if we would have kept a similar type of scheme that worked, then I think we would have been in a lot better position. But every new coach wants to have it his way, his scheme, his plays. I get all of that. It's an ego thing in NFL with coaches. But when you look at what this team was successful for, you gotta build around that. Swallow your pride and build off of what works. So that's just what we see on film and what we've had conversation with about those who are on a much higher level of knowledge than us that they have agreed in principle with us on,
Now, Kevin, I want to jump in here quick because you bring up a point that it just baffles me about this staff is, and you hear a lot of staffs will say this: we're gonna put our players in the best position and work to their strengths. How the hell is this working to their strengths then? If, like you said, they're putting squares and round O's or circles and squares, whatever the hell you want to call it, but this system, I feel like, is being forced onto a team that isn't ready for the system, if that makes sense. JJ, do you kind of clear the air on that? Because it just the way this system is working on really both sides of the ball, and I think Ejiro Evero is doing a hell of a job on that side. But I just feel like a lot of these players aren't fit for the systems that they want to put in place right now.
I think you have a situation where, and it's hard for us, right? Because we're so frustrated as fans to accept where we are as an organization, as a roster, with a new coaching staffs. You got two offense. I'm gonna stick to the offense first. You have an offensive-minded head coach who has developed his own scheme, his own play call, and his method, for running an offense, and has a certain type, right? Who needed to build a staff and reached out and got one of the young, bright, rising stars on the offensive side of the football, and Thomas Brown, who comes from a different offensive scheme, what has become a tried and true offensive play style, from the Shanahan McVay tree. And you got those two guys, a guy from the older guard who has had some success in this league with a certain type of quarterback running a certain scheme, now trying to marry his style and give up some of what he likes to do and give it over to this new guy that he hired to bring in and incorporate some of his stuff, his run blocking schemes, and his passing schemes, and things that made the team he came from successful, and merge those two philosophies and methodologies and build those things around this young quarterback that they hope fits who he is, right? But I think, just like with every element of football, in my opinion, and this is something that I've been harping on for the last 3 seasons and before, because you just don't, when you don't have it, it just shows up every time. And it's the word alignment, right? Like the Panthers, we haven't gotten aligned, in terms of what we want to do schematically and the personnel that we have to run those schemes, right? Because we got this great on paper staff, but all of them are coming from different backgrounds. And so you got all that diversity trying to get into a room and figure out how to norm together. And we haven't gotten to that stage yet where we normed out. And it shows up like in the games, it shows up in the struggles that we see with the run game and the passing game. It shows up in some of the route combinations that we're trying, that that the quarterback school guy, he always brings up when he goes back and look at our film. And so I think that's why what we look at looks like such a bad product. We don't have the personnel to do the things that the coaches want to do yet. I think Evero was the first to identify, when I switched to the defensive side, that some of the cuts and some of the moves that they made early on was a result of him having guys that wasn't necessarily doing what he needs done in his defense. And so we saw some surprise cuts after camp and preseason, and some pickups. But I think that was Evero just trying to get to the right type of guys that can do what he wants to do, task-wise, within his scheme. And although, we don't have a bunch of new name brand additions to that defense, the one thing I'll give Evero credit for is that despite all the injuries that they've had on the defensive side of the ball, you don't see one guy being exploited a lot, game over game. You know, a guy might have a bad play or two in a game, but he is really hidden our deficiencies or injuries on the defensive side of the ball really well. And everybody who has gotten an opportunity to backfield for somebody, i.e. Sam Franklin, you know, the young rookie, Deshaun, can't think of his last name right now. He's so new and he didn't play that much, but the guy who replaced Dante Jackson, CJ Henderson has played well. And I think, you know, that's evidenced by the fact that we haven't talked about him a lot at all. And so besides, you know, the fact he got hurt, you know, a week or so ago, like he still played solid. And we just got a guy off the practice squad from the Giants, and he started on Sunday, and you didn't see him make any glaring mistakes in the defense either. And so Evero seems to have figured out the type of player and athlete that he wants to run his scheme. He just don't have the top guys yet, and he doesn't have some of his starting caliber guys out there yet.
Well, I mean, even look at this list. Look at that. I mean, the injured reserve. I made this graphic, and it's ridiculous. I think it's 13 guys on IR. Obviously, Marquise Haynes possibly could be activated off that list.
That's ridiculous.
I know he's been practicing. And we talked about it a few weeks ago, Bryson and I. I can't remember the last time the Panthers had many guys on IR or just injuries in general. I mean, it's crazy.
2014 season.
Was it this bad? I mean, I mean that wasn't that far long ago. Just
yeah, man. We was picking up running backs off the street in 2014, and I mean it was horrible. If I remember correctly, I think we had like 16 at one point in time. Like 2014 was such an injury plagued year. It was just a miracle that the rest of the division was just crap, and we was able to get in at 7-8-1. But I did just look it up season by season, but yeah, 2014 was the last time we were this bad as far as this many players on injury reserve at one time.
But hats off to Evero. I mean, and JJ said it's incredible how well that defense played this last week. I mean, to hold the Colts to under 200 yards on offense and to give up, what was it, 13 points defensively to them was just it's incredible. It really is, with all the guys that are injured and Brian Burns concussion. You had Xavier Woods go out, and you know JJ mentions bringing in guys. Troy Hill has been a real bright spot, I feel like, for this team that came in. I mean, a guy came off the streets 2 weeks before the Panthers started their season. I mean, he was in the starting lineup almost immediately and had an impact. And I mean, he's given up plays too, but for a guy to come in like that and play at the level he has, it's just it goes off to Evero and just getting these guys ready and just playing that next man up mentality, which I think a lot of us had hoped was going to happen with the offense too, just based off of, on paper, this staff was supposed to be, was highly sought after. And it's not just fans either. I mean, it was the media too. National media was hyping this staff up just as much as the fans were. So, but yeah.
And if I can say this real quick, Curtis, everybody been, drinking the CJ Stroud Kool-Aid. Y'all know that the same offensive unit that put up all those points his record-setting day, that was the same guys that was here Sunday. Like, it wasn't anybody missing. So that's enough to give Ejiro credit right there. So he had the same wide receivers, same running back. So when he put up that record-setting day Sunday, that was with the same unit of guys that was here Sunday. And excuse my language, but we put that shit on lock. You know what I'm saying? So that's for everybody, that's Evero. So for everybody that's performing fellatio on CJ Stroud right now, and excuse my language, but I had to clean it up because I wanted to say the other word. But that's what they're doing because I admin with one of the biggest Panther groups, and I approved all those damn Stroud posts because I have to. But like I've been asking, where was this energy when Houston was here? Because that's the same wide receivers, same tight ends, same running backs that were here, and we put the clamps down. What, he had like 140 yards? Man, F out of here with that. But anyway, shout out to Evero.
No, I mean, I'm 100% with you on the Evero praise, because I won't name any names, but some pretty high profile people early in the year found issue with Evero, and they were trying to passively aggressively, I think, attack him publicly, and indicate that he wasn't doing that great of a job as a defensive coordinator. And I always felt that was unfair to him, considering week 1, he loses his top cover corner. In week 2, he loses his veteran play calling Mike linebacker and Shaq Thompson. He also loses Xavier Woods. And then a few weeks later, he loses his nickelback project, a big nickel project in Jeremy Chin. He has dealt without Dante Jackson for a stretch. He has dealt without Von Bell for a couple games now. That's a lot of veteran leadership that he was basically trying to perform without. And to me, the only offense that really exploited us all season has been the Detroit Lions, right? And I think, Seattle kind of started getting the best of us a little bit. But again, before Louvu got hurt that game, and I believe that was the game that Louvu got injured.
Miami too.
Yeah, we held up pretty.
Yeah,
Miami.
Miami.
Yeah, I'm sorry about Miami. I kind of I was dealing with trauma about that one. But nevertheless, we have Evero played really well. I just think we hit a couple of games, the Miami game, the Detroit game, where we just couldn't overcome the injuries. The people that were missing, they were just, they meant too much to us in those games. And we always have been top heavy. But to me, I think the thing that Evero has done that he's not getting credit for is what he was doing with guys like Gross Matos before he got hurt, right? We were seeing the best version of Gross Matos before he got hurt. I think we have seen the best version of CJ Henderson to this point, right? The most solid QB play, the most confident he's looked. I think Xavier Woods, when he's been there, he's been healthy. I think Louvu obviously is just continuing what he's done for the last couple seasons. I think there are guys that have really stepped up under Evero's coaching style. And now that guys are getting back healthy, Xavier Woods came back. Obviously Louvu is healthier from the hip situation. He's looking better and better every week. He earned Defensive Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Week last week.
Shout out to his mom for being there. I think we need to have mom sitting beside Tepper every game.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, get mom's here.
And so, but I'm saying all that, when I look at who has done the best coaching job for this team, even though we're 1-7 or whatever now, I think it's clearly Evero. And I just, as good as he's been, I was actually thinking about this yesterday. I was like, man, just imagine if he was actually able to buy his own groceries and get the guys that he feels best fits his defense, and then deploy that talent on this defense. I think Evero, I think he'd have the opportunity to build something special if he was able to stay here long enough to build the type of defense he wants. Right now, he's still playing with guys that he didn't pick. But if he was able to be here long enough to be able to select some guys, handpick guys, to run the defense the way that he wants to run it, I think this defense has the ability to be a top 5 to 10 defense in the NFL. So shout out to Avery, man.
And real quick, JJ, you brought up a player, and Curtis, I don't know if you had planned to talk about this. Can we talk about that? Excuse my language. That bullshit penalty against Xavier Woods on Michael Pittman Jr. Like, I felt like I'm one of the ones I do not like to blame the refs when we lose a game, but I feel like that the penalties that were not called and were called in the first quarter kind of sucked a lot of the life and killed a lot of momentum out of this team. Yeah, we had time to recover. I mean, the 2 pick sixes, I get all of that, but when Michael Pittman himself came out and said that was not a dirty play, that's textbook. I prefer if I'm gonna get hit to get hit that way. I mean, I threw my drink when they called that penalty and didn't. And I was like, "Are you serious?" Like you could see it as clear as day. That was like, how do you tackle nowadays? Like, how do you play defense in NFL? That call was so. I've seen a lot of egregious calls not go our way, but that one, for me, I just think that one just took the life out of it for us early.
No, you're right, man.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Because I'll say this, and I hate to play this card, but I feel like every game I've gone to this season, there has been 2 or 3 crucial plays that the refs have either fucked up the call on, and a lot of times it's Bryce Young not even getting a damn flag. And he was. I figured if the Panthers got a smaller statured quarterback, they'd still give him a little leeway with some of these hits. Cam Newton never fucking got him. And I thought, Bryce Young would get at least 1 or 2, and he hasn't gotten shit this year. And then that one on Sunday, I remember I was swearing in the stands. I was like, this is fucking flag football. I mean, it was the clean hit. I thought they were going to pick it up and not call it after, because they kind of held it together a little bit. But of course, the way that things have been going with Carolina this season with flags, they are just that whole unit, the whole ref unit on Sunday was just flag happy across the board. I thought, personally,
and that none hit on Minshew when he ran, like he just went over his helmet. He didn't even check. If you slowed it down, they went back and showed it that they called the late hit on and added 15 more yards. He didn't even touch his helmet. It just at full speed. It may look like him. He didn't even hit it. I'm like.
And Bryce Young didn't get the call last week when he got hit.
I was so mad about that because, man, when watching that real time, I couldn't even see the play for thinking about the 2 guys who hit Bryce Young the week prior, and we had to eat that, and it was the same exact play, and I even said under the tweet that I tweeted about that, and I was like, and man, we're at home, right? Like that's in Charlotte. If you can't get that call in Charlotte, you're not going to get it anywhere in the NFL. Man. And I hate that that's the narrative around the guys that play for the Panthers, the quarterbacks that play for the Panthers, is that if we take those type of hits, we see that hit get called 98% of the time around the league every week that we're watching somebody else play. When it's our guy, it rarely ever gets called, and I hate that. But yeah, man, it sucks. And the only thing, and I'm gonna say this, and it may be off base or whatever when it comes to why it happens to us. I honestly believe it happens to us more than other teams, other than some other reasons. I'm gonna say 2 things. I think it has something to do with our quarterback's ethnicity in all cases of what's been happening recently. But I do also believe that it's because of the temperament of our head coaches. I don't think refs fear the coaches who are in Carolina to really go after them. They're refs. You're not going to do that to a Mike Tomlin, a quarterback. You're not going to do that to Bill Belichick's quarterback. You're not going to do it to Andy Reid's quarterback. You're not going to do it to Pete Carroll's quarterback. But you would do it to Frank Reich. You do it to Ron Rivera, because those guys are such gentlemen of the NFL to where a ref isn't afraid of the backlash or the cussing out that you're going to get. Just imagine if somebody hit Brock Purdy like that, and what Shanahan, the fit he would have on the sideline from doing that. They have to fear and respect the leadership of the organization to give that organization's quarterbacks the calls that they deserve. And I don't think we have that in Carolina.
And I will say, to your point, hold on, to your point, it goes back to, I can't remember the week this year when, Bryce got hit on that late. It was an offsides call. The guy blew him up.
Oh, yeah.
Frank Reich said he should have dirted it. He should have dirted it.
Yeah.
But I will say, in Frank Reich's defense, I think it was in this game, and I don't know what call it was. I don't know. I think it was maybe the hit on Pittman. Frank Reich was heated. He was yelling at the ref because I saw him go on to the field and he was bitching. And that was probably the first time all season I've ever seen him actually go out there and bitch about a play call in the game. And I don't know which one it was, but he did do that in the game. But you're right. I mean, the main example, the one in Minnesota. I mean, that you should have been out on the field reaming that ref's ass. for that play.
I know. And
Right.
we don't get that reaction, but refs take notes of what what they can get away with who. And they wouldn't do that against a coach that they feared and respected. And Wright's personality, nice guy, persona. I like the dude, but he's just too laid back. And that not showing emotion sometimes can work against you when it's time to protect your players. And so Bryce is going to need that type of protection. Bryce is going to need somebody to go to bat for him when he's being mishandled. Not just because he's a small in stature, but because he's your prized asset. Like Bryce is the franchise, regardless of how he feels, how I emotionally get in my feelings. Sometimes watching him, I'm not ignorant. Like Bryce is the franchise, right? So we need to figure out how to protect him, number one, and how to give him the skilled players and the protection that he needs around him to make him successful. Like if we don't do that, then we're going to fail. He's not like some guy who got drafted or overdrafted in the past, like a Sam Darnold, like a Zach Wilson. He's better than those type of guys, right? So you need to invest in this and make sure that you build an infrastructure around him to protect him on the field, and that you're doing the intangible things on the sideline to make sure that he gets the proper respect and protection that he needs as your franchise face. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
And the last part, I was gonna say real quick, y'all was talking about penalties. Have y'all noticed ever since DJ Moore got called for that, taking his helmet penalty off in Atlanta, I stopped counting after 15 from last year and even this year on Twitter. They were showing where players have taken their helmet off on the field and not get flagged. Have y'all seen how many times that happens? And I'm like, so what about us? Like for me, it's just like, really? Like I haven't seen no player get flagged for taking his helmet off since DJ Moore, but they've shown on Twitter countless examples almost every Sunday where a player, whether he's mad or whether he's celebrating, takes his helmet off on the field in front of the refs and don't get called.
Man, it's
Carolina Panther way right there.
Bruh.
Yeah. It is, man. Like, and I hate it because I feel like we always are on the wrong side of privilege, right? The wrong side of privilege on the field. We don't get the benefit of the doubt. Even when it comes to where they place the ball on, like on fourth, third, and short, whatever, like, first downs, like coming up just short. I actually, I don't know what game it was. Maybe it's the Minnesota game. Maybe it was the Saints game. I can't remember. Maybe it was the Atlanta game. There was a play where I feel like they even moved the ball a little bit. And Shaq Thompson, it had to be week
Atlanta.
Was it Atlanta? It was
Atlanta. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, that was in that week 1 in Atlanta.
Shaq Thompson. I think it was Shaq Thompson. But
it was Shaq. He was livid.
Yeah, he was livid because he saw it. I saw it in real time. I thought I was going crazy. I was like, that is not the spot. It's like before they moved the chains, it's like they nudged the ball just a little bit back so it would be short. And I was like,
I missed that. That.
Man.
I was there, and I missed that.
Who was it?
You was in Atlanta?
Yeah, I was there for that game.
Yeah, it was the fake punt, right? Was it the fake punt where he reached?
Yeah, where he reached for it, yes, and actually got it. And they showed it from different because I was in my truck.
The Hayden Hurst.
Yeah,
or not.
No.
It was
LaVisca.
No, LaVisca. It was LaVisca.
It was LaVisca.
Hurst was blocking. He gave up his block, and that's why he didn't get the first down. That's why I brought up Hayden Hurst.
LaVisca's right foot, he had kept it off the ground, and he reached out simultaneously. So as his foot was landing and touching the ground, he had already reached and crossed the first down marker. It was clear because at first I was like, he's short because I didn't see. It looked like his foot was out of bounds, but his foot was out of bounds across the line, but it wasn't touching yet. So
exactly,
as his foot touched, the ball had been reached across the line of scrimmage. Oh, not line of scrimmage, but the first down marker. It was clear as day on the replay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they didn't even adjust the ball. They didn't give us anything with that. Not getting that first down changed the game. It changed the game. It was a perfectly called play, perfectly timed. We had momentum. We didn't get that. I think they got the ball. I think they ended up scoring like at least a field goal or something.
Yeah, it was a field goal.
That was major. And so, but it's just little stuff like that, man. But it's too often that it happens to us in Carolina.
One thing I wanted to ask you guys, because I was at this game, so again, it's hard to see when you're there, and maybe JJ can answer this over Kevin, but maybe Kevin saw it too. In this game, I can't recall when it was, but there was a touchdown for the Colts, and it might have even been on one of the picks. I'm not sure. But the ball was fumbled, or it looked like it was fumbled. And I don't know if you caught that, JJ, or not, but do you think that should have been challenged? Because I know Bryson, when we were watching it live, he thought it should have almost been a touchback on the field. And I can't remember the play, and
you mean Michael Pittman?
I don't know. I honestly can't remember. I know it was a play.
Was it Michael Pittman? No, I'm thinking of what play it could have been. Was it Michael Pittman as he got close to the goal line?
That might have been it.
Whatever it was, I think. Hold on, because it was a couple situations that happened where the ball came out. But I think when I look back at it, I think the player was down first. I think the knee of the elbow or whatever had touchdown first.
Yeah, I was just curious because that one I didn't watch back or see the replay on, because that's another thing. They don't show replays ever at the games. It's rare. It's ridiculous. Even when it's a bad play, I still want to see who fucked up and whatever else, and they just disregarded it entirely. Let's talk about this. Kind of switching gears just a tad. Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show this week. I'm sure you guys have seen this by now. And he said, quote, "One thing about David Tepper is he's not very patient and he does whatever he wants. I don't think anyone would be surprised if anything happens in Carolina with the season that they're having." What do you guys make of this? I clearly think this was Tepper giving this message to Schefter and kind of pushing it out there and just throwing it, putting a little bit of heat and a little bit of added heat to the room here as Carolina continues to lose this season. I'm just curious what you guys thought of Schefter's comments.
I think Schefter is just going off of recent history, right? I think David Tepper has a reputation for being erratic, impatient, and I think right now, if you were a betting person, because a lot of the stuff that the reporters have, a lot of it is information fed to them, and then other things are guesstimates based on history, right? Educated guesses based on the history of a franchise, a person, a coach, a player, whatever, right? So I think Dave Tepper has shown the propensity to make rash decisions when things don't go his way. And it goes back to Cam Newton getting injured, Ron Rivera not being successful within the first 2 seasons that he was his owner. He fires Ron before the end of the season, and then goes into the offseason looking for a head coach. When he learns that Josh McDaniels doesn't prefer Carolina, he goes and tries to steal Matt Rule from going to the New York Jets and flies out to interview him at his house in Waco just to secure that bag. And you go further, you cut Cam, you bring Teddy. Teddy doesn't work out. You put the charge on your head coach and your GM that you have to find another quarterback by hook or by crook. And so you start with Matt Stafford. When that doesn't pan out, you go in your pursuit of Deshaun Watson. When that stalls out, you go and make an erratic trade for Sam Darnold, right? And after a year of that, you go into year 3 with this new staff. And now, even before you get into year 3, you go back out on your pursuit of Deshaun Watson. You make that public again, right? And, so you're pursuing that all over again, even though Sam Darnold is on your roster, you got a 5th-year option. You don't care. You go back out and you try to get that done again. It doesn't happen for you. And then we go back into another season. And, people don't really know what his actual involvement is with these decisions to make sure that you get a Matt Corral in the draft, to then go back and get Baker Mayfield in the summer. But I really think none of this stuff happens without Dave Tepper wanting it to happen to a degree. It doesn't matter.
Or signing off on it.
Yeah, he has to at least sign off on it. And we know that signature on any decision is very, very heavily weighed by him from an analysis perspective. And he actually offers feedback as to whether he thinks it's a good idea or not. And so there's so much that's wrong with the Carolina Panthers, and it ties back to Tepper's impatience. And everybody knows it now. So Schefter, I think, was just speaking on the person that he has learned behaviorally over the last 5 seasons, just based on his history. And so, and it's probably being talked about in league circles too.
Kevin?
Well, I like to counter that, because if you saw the articles or the quotes put out by both Joe Person and Sheena Quick, saying that this perception that David Tepper is so hands-on with the decision is like they kind of cleared it up and said that, he's been asked, but he's not the one that's, quote, finalizing or saying, hey, my way or no way. You know what I'm saying? And they said that when they was talking about, the rumor that, Frank Reich wanted Stroud, but Dave Tepper wanted Bryce Young. And they said that, no, that they said it's been confirmed that was a collective decision along with other decisions. So basically, a lot of fans are assuming Tepper is just so heavily involved with the decisions. Now, as an owner, I mean, yeah, he has a right to, offer his opinion and things like that. I saw a lot of that in the Panthers Confidential, but it's just perceived that Tepper has his Jerry Jones type demeanor where he's got to have his hands on and things of that nature. So I'm glad that a couple of days ago that both Sheena and Joe clarified and cleared that up, that this perception that Panther fans have about Tepper is misguided when it comes to the personnel decisions on this team. Well, does he offer his opinion? Did they offer his opinion when asked? Yeah, but he's not, quote, saying forcing it down. So
let me give you a little insight, and I probably shouldn't share this, but let's say it comes from somebody who is a former employee of the Carolina Panthers, right? I learned about them not working there, reached out to him. We had a relationship going back a few years. And I asked him, did he leave voluntarily? And he said, yeah. I won't go into the details about why he left. But when I asked him about how it was working with Tepper, like in the building, how is it working with him? And this is his words. His or her words. They said that Tepper likes people to stand up to him, but then when they do, he obliterates them. So that's a quote. That being said, I think Tepper is the type to come in and let people know what he would like, and then let you go off and make your decision, right? But if that's in the back of your mind as somebody who knows that that's his temperament, then I think you kind of tend to go that way or risk be obliterated if you don't go that way. And he can walk away and say, hey, look, I didn't make the decision. I just made a suggestion based on the data or whatever, the conversations we've had in the room about the options that are in front of us. I weighed in, but hey, guys, that's what I feel. I'm going to leave it to you and you make the decision, but that's how I feel. And I think when you have a reputation for being so strong-armed, you can say that you didn't make the decision, but when people are afraid to counter you for the risk of being obliterated, then you tend to not want to go against that. So that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm not saying that what was reported or what's being reported about Dave Tepper not actually making calls and making picks or making decisions to sign or cut or whatever. He may not be doing it, but I think passively his presence insists that people kind of get in line with his vision if he says anything. So I think the best thing for Tepper to do, in my opinion, would be, and I know he's not going to do this as an owner, but this is what I wish, is that he would just kind of just be absentee type owner and let football people make football decisions and just kind of report back to him why they did what they did rather than him being in draft rooms and stuff like that. Because I think his influence is heavy. And unfortunately, we'll never know how heavy. And he's smart enough to not admit to what he influenced versus what he didn't. But I guarantee you this, the coaches and the GM wasn't pursuing Deshaun Watson for themselves.
Well, I want to not really switch because I feel like this is all tied together, but I've seen it online a lot lately, obviously with the Panthers record and, people already calling for Frank Reich's head. And I honestly, I haven't done the research on this, but I don't think there has been a time, and I could be wrong, that a coach in his first year with his team that drafted a quarterback in the first round has been fired mid-season of that year. I don't think it's ever happened. It may have before, but just in recollection of the last 10, 15 years, I don't think that has happened. Do you guys think firing, because fans have talked about it, I don't know where you guys stand on this, that's why I'm asking. Do you think firing Frank Reich mid-season like this, let's say if they lose this weekend, does that do any good for Bryce Young's development?
I don't think it has an effect either way because of who Bryce Young is, right? I don't think he's a type of guy that would be affected by a business decision in his rookie season. And the reason I don't is because I don't think who he is as a player is dependent on Frank Reich being his head coach. I just don't feel that in my heart, right? I think it's one of those situations to where, well, let me say this first. I don't know if it's the smartest thing to do. So it's not like I'm advocating for it. But if they did it this early, then it's kind of like, okay, we switch coaches on to the next situation. Let me learn a new offense. Let me get with what's going on. Let me stay with Thomas Brown if they retain him, or Potts Frazier if they retain him, and continue down this path and find out what's going to happen in the offseason. And then he could get paired with like a Doug Peterson, like Trevor Lawrence did in Jacksonville, right? And you pick up with a guy who's actually better for you, and you can grow from it. So I don't think it has an effect on Bryce Young, and I really don't think the team overall is negatively impacted because I really don't think that there's a lot of juice in that locker room. And not saying they don't like Frank Reich, not saying that they'll support him. I just don't think that they have experienced enough good with him to be bought into him at this point, to where him being fired mid-season would totally, tank them emotionally. So, yeah, I don't think it has any impact on Bryce or the rest of the players if he was fired mid-season or shortly after the season.
Kevin, how do you feel about the talks of fans already calling for Reich's head here?
I think the talk is just the frustration. Me, I always like to try to think logical. If there was going to be any firing, it should have been done during the bye week to give enough time to adjust. And also, when you fire somebody, you're looking to upgrade and improve. Let's just say, for the sake of conversation, we fire Frank right after the season. Who would be a significant improvement that's willing to come in and take this job without a first-round pick? Now we are looking to have a substantial size amount salary cap, but with this whole thing with Brian Burns contract, things like that. Like this job is not as attractive as it was, say, this time last year. So for me, I think the fans are just being fans with frustration. 1-7, fire somebody, just so I can feel better about this. At least you're doing something. I just think that's just a knee jerk, short term fix. And then, like I said, who out there would make it, significantly better? Now, have I said, fire right? Yep, I've done the hashtag on Twitter a few times in the heat of the moment. So, I'll eat that one. But when I sat back and thought about it, it's like, okay, who's going to do a better job with what we got? Because Tepper paid a shitload of money to bring in all these coaches. So, even though he is the second richest owner in the league, as y'all saw with the Raiders, the owner, he's paying $85 million for Gruden, McDaniels, and the GM to clear house. Now, it was cool to see Antonio Pierce get his win as a interim coach. I like it. One, because he's a good guy. Two, it always looked good for black coaches on an interim basis to have some success, because we know how that storyline is out there with what's being perceived. But I just don't think that it's something don't have. I think Frank Reich, if Matt Rule got 2 years, Frank Reich definitely deserves to get another year to try to adjust and fix the mistakes on the other errors from this season.
I want to be on the record. I think it does no one any good. And you guys know me. I was pretty patient with Matt Rule, probably the most patient fan out there when it comes to him.
You were.
I thought Kevin brought up a great point of, like, who would want to take this job if you would let go of Frank Reich right now? I don't know if there would be a team out there, a guy out there, and obviously, someone's going to fall into place, and, there's only 32 jobs in the NFL, so they'd find someone, but it just, I don't know what you'd sell to them besides, Bryce Young, and, if they don't have the first pick, and, David Tepper goes out and tries to get this hot, that next hot college coach out there, Matt Rule, and, he's turned around 2 programs, gets rid of him after 2.5 years or whatever it was, or 3 years in a couple of games. And then comes in and brings in this all, quote unquote, all-star staff with literally supposed to be the top of the top coaches on offense and defense. And, the head coach with his experience on offense. And then it kind of stalls out. I just think it would send a bad message across the league. And while I agree with you, JJ, on I don't think it would, I think mentally Bryce Young would be fit for it if they were to go in that direction. I just don't think it's good for any rookie's development to go ahead and make that change so drastically right now. Because, I feel like the impact is a lot bigger than most people actually think. And it would be, you've already made the decision, and you've already switched play callers, which is, I already think has had an impact on him, whether you want to think it's positively or negatively. But making that switch and then making a switch now I don't think it's the right move. I think people just need to, and I said this to Bryson a couple weeks ago, people need to chill out. I think there was way too much high expectations for this year just based off of what Steve Wilkes did last year. And the offensive line has taken a step back, whether you blame that on injuries or fit or whatever you want to call it. And then what we talked about, you're putting guys out of position that don't really fit this scheme. They don't have the depth to fit this scheme. They don't have the players right now. And this is, whether you want to call it or not, this has been really a rebuild season. And I don't think a lot of fans were expecting that. And I know a lot of us weren't. And it's not what, we thought this season was. No one expected this team to be 1-7, but I think we need to temper our expectations, see progress from Bryce Young this year, and let's see what they can do in year 2. Because that was supposed to be the 2024 season when he looks back at it in this offseason, whether you want to take Scott Fitter's words for it, saying they're going to be contending for the NFC South this year. 2024 was supposed to be the year this team took off. Like, exponentially. So, and if they don't do it next year, that's when you cut bait. But I get it. I know fans are impatient. It's been 5 years of hell, and I understand that. But that's kind of where I'm at. I just don't think it does anyone any good to go ahead and fire this all-star staff that everyone's talked about and these premier coaches, and you're going to let them go 8 weeks into the year or 9
Curtis,
year.
Curtis, let me offer this specifically gift wrap for you. What if shortly after the season, or even before their season ends, you hear that Ben Johnson definitely wants to leave Detroit, and he really likes Bryce Young, the prospect of coaching Bryce Young. I'm not saying that he would say that with Frank Wright in place. I'm just saying.
I think we need to. I know I said let's wait, and now I don't want to backtrack. But what I'm trying to say is, I think people need to wait until the end of the season. I don't think it does anyone good cutting bait mid-season with Bryce Young. It does not help his development. And what does it do? What is the payoff of firing Frank Reich right now? To get a jump start on the head coaching search? We saw where what happened last year with our head coaching search, because we're at 1-7 right now. So, I don't think there's any benefit to that at all. I think ride it out at least to the end of the season. And then if we're sitting here and the Panthers only have one win at the end of the year, absolutely, I think there's justification to get rid of Frank Reich. Yeah. But I think let's get to that point before we make a hasty decision now. That's just
I agree with that.
I'm sorry, that was a little bit of a backpedal because I said let's see him in year 2. But I think cutting bait in the middle of Bryce Young's first season it's just too early.
No, I agree with that. I just don't want, and I'm talking about for us as a fan base, and the team and the players, just because you come in and you identify the obvious pick for first round, for your first overall pick, if it's obvious, right? But let's say, Bryce Young was absolutely the guy, the consensus guy around the league. And they picked they basically chose the layup and picked him. Just because you made that selection on the player doesn't mean that you're the most ideal coach for the player, right? And if you're the owner of this team, and I'm going to tell you what I feel, right, about Frank Wright and
we know how you feel.
and Bryce Young. I'm just gonna focus on our guys. I believe Frank Wright, and this is what I thought. So I'm going to have to talk about the other guy a little bit, but not in a comparison way. When I realized that Frank Wright could potentially be our coach, I automatically keyed in on C.J. Stroud for who I thought Frank Wright was, right? Frank Wright has told us that he chose Bryce. And if he's saying it, I'm going to accept him at his word for it. However, I think Frank Wright isn't naturally built to coach to the strengths of Bryce Young, right? And so now we got Thomas Brown trying that, right? The problem is in the best case scenario where Thomas Brown figures it out with Bryce Young and then they become wildly successful, then the best case scenario for the Carolina Panthers is that we have Thomas Brown as our offensive play caller for a year and a half, right? And then we lose him because that success probably translates to a head coaching opportunity. And then we're back to who's going to coach Bryce Young now. We're going to go back and set Bryce Young back in year 3 to return him back to Frank Wright, who we don't know if his natural style, scheme, play calling, sequencing, whatever fits who the quarterback is. I don't believe that Frank Wright is
aligns with Bryce Young.
I don't think he's compatible with Bryce Young. I think he's compatible with a different type of quarterback. I don't think that quarterback is Bryce Young. And my fear as an owner would be that I am stymieing the development of this young asset that I traded away all these assets to go get by limiting him to the head coach who isn't compatible with him.
Kevin, you're chomping at the bit. Let's go. Let's hear Kevin.
My opinion on that, I'm not worried about Thomas, regardless of success, Thomas Brown being picked anytime soon to be a head coach. And I could just say one reason why. Look at the resume of Eric Bieniemy, what he had to do with all the success he had in Kansas City. And he had to leave to go be an OC somewhere else after 7-8 years out there in Kansas City, you know what I'm saying, to finally be recognized.
But it won't be
Hold on. I gave you a piece.
Yeah.
So, my whole thing is, it was speculation, before the year started. Oh, potentially we could lose both coordinators, after the year. And I was sitting back like, no. You're talking about two African-American coordinators who are, really don't have a lot of, quote, spotlight, coach and running units like that. So, and there's qualified not only coordinators but head coaches, African American, who are still not getting a job. So for me, and not to try to make it too much of a race thing, but just based on common sense and history and what has been shown every coaching cycle time after time again, I'm not particularly, from my point of view, worried about, even if we go out next year and have a 10-7, 11-6, 12-5 type of year, even if we had that type of year, I still wouldn't be worried about, Thomas Brown being a coaching candidate to leave. Now, as far as the other part that you were talking about with the question, as far as about Frank Wright being the right person, the same chart that you brought up, I mean, it's kind of hard to fire a coach who got 13 players on IR during the roughest part of his schedule. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to consider more factors than just the record. Well, what contributed, to that record? You know what I'm saying? So, I just, for whatever your feelings are, also look at the fact, how is that going to look to pending free agents? How quickly we're, being impatient. You want to come to a culture and environment that you feel like is stable. So it's like, oh wow, if I have a rough stretch, am I out of here too, like they do their coaches? So just from an outside perspective, I just think that, don't get me wrong, we want to win, but it's hard to win in this league, as every coach has said. And I think that we need to show some stability because, like you said, the resume of the type of coaches that we brought in here with Frank Wright, that's not going to go over too well in the field because, they talk. It's a brotherhood. A lot of things can be said off the record, and don't go to Carolina. You know what I'm saying? If you ain't, blazing that first year, they're going to get rid of you. So it would be like you said, it would be a hugely bad look to dismiss no matter who may, quote, be available in the off season. So that's all I got to say about that.
All right, I want to talk about this because we got a couple more things, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Amir Smith-Marset, I'm sure you guys have seen this by now, but he had put out a tweet today, and this had come after, I think one of the beat reporters asked about his involvement on the offense and why he's not getting a lot of playing time, and they basically said, they like to stick to the first, the top three guys. Usually it's Adam Thielen, Chark, and Mingo on the field, and that's just the way they're running their sets. And we've seen a lot of that. There's really not been a huge rotation among that wide receiver group. But with all that said, Marset tweeted out today, proving yourself just to get overlooked is crazy. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this, and we'll go with JJ here. What are your thoughts on Smith-Marset so far? And do you think he should have an increased role within this offense?
Well, it's hard to say because, just focusing on the things we have seen him do, I think he's an excellent punt fielder, right? Like, he catches everything that comes down. He hasn't, in my recollection, he hasn't muffed a punt yet. The only bad play I've seen him make was when he fielded the punt inside the 5 and he ran backwards. I think that was like week 1 or week 2.
Atlanta, yep.
Yeah, that was Atlanta, and that was a negative play. But I think he's very dependable as a punt returner, as a fielder of punts. He hasn't looked special. He almost broke one this past week, and where I saw like the flash of why they went to get him. He isn't blazing fast, or like he doesn't look extra special as an athlete, but I think he is good enough. I think it's one of those situations where I'm looking at him as a guy that was like my guy, Shi Smith, where I think they're similar type guys, right? I think both of them have made a way to be on a roster via special teams. I think I call him ISM because I can't get his name right. I think ISM, I think he has the ability to be better with the ball in his hands than what a guy like Shi Smith was in this offense. I think Shi probably is a more natural wide receiver in terms of running routes and things like that. One of my trusted Twitter accounts and a good Twitter friend is Thor, who is a Minnesota Vikings fan, but he's a draft specialist. And when I reached out to Thor about ISM after we picked him up, I realized that he had history in Minnesota. And so I was like, Thor, what do you think about it? And he basically was like, he's all right, type of thing. Definitely he's a guy that can make plays, with the ball in his hands, but, he's not like a great, route runner or anything like that as a wide receiver, right? I think he has a penchant for being able to make big plays, but I don't think, at least in my opinion, I don't think he would offer an upgrade to any of the top 3 guys on the team. But I think the way that he sees himself is that he's probably just as good as what he's competing with in practice, right? So I think we're at a point right now with this staff where we know what we're going to get from Terrace Marshall Jr., right? So I don't think that there's much upside there with this particular staff and the way that they want to play him. Just move him out of the rotation, right? And so, we're going down that back stretch of the year where we're 1-7. We lose 2 more games, then, we're essentially going to be out of it. I think the staff should probably take a look at guys like ISM to see what they can do besides special teams, and let that, especially if the coaching staff stays together, let that be an indicator of who this guy can be in a live game before you get into the offseason. And if he is anything above whatever the watermark is or the waterline is in terms of what's a serviceable receiver, in their opinion, then then he can come in at camp as your definite punt returner and potentially a wide receiver 5 or 6 on your roster. And I think he should get the opportunity to show that if he's been playing in practice. Because I heard that I didn't listen to Thomas Brown's press conference, but I heard that he answered the question about ISM, and I guess he has been playing well in practice, but he just hasn't gotten in the rotation yet. So I do believe.
Right. Well, what do you have to lose? I mean, you're 1-7. Give these guys an opportunity.
Well, I mean,
the shit ain't working otherwise. Why are we getting?
I think it's political, and I think guys like Chark signed here so he can prove himself as a guy who can be a guy, so he can get a follow-on contract. I think he's on a 1-year deal, right? So you can't necessarily get him out of the lineup because you paid him whatever it was, $8 million or $6 million or whatever it was, to bring him in and let him get a shot to prove himself as a wide receiver. He has experience. You got a young quarterback. He's probably better to have in the game than ISM right now. Mingo is the guy that you drafted with the 2nd-round pick. So you want him to get reps, because you hope that he develops into somebody that you can use going forward if you're Scott Fitterer, right? And so, you want to be able to justify where you picked him at. You like him as a guy. So you can't really get him out of rotation because this is the point in his rookie season where he should be becoming less of a rookie and more of a 1-year veteran. And so, and you can't get Adam Thielen out offense, right? Like you got to have him in the offense. He is Bryce Young's security blanket. So I just think it's a situation where you gotta, if you're ISM, you gotta hope that. I actually hate that he tweeted that. To be honest, as an adult and as a person that knows how the world works, and when the coaches see that, that's not what they're going to want to see from the guy that they traded, a late 7th round pick or whatever, a swap pick for. You on the edge of a roster anyway, like you being loud in week 9 about not getting a shot. I think that's a little overzealous, for where you are as a player in this league. And not saying that it's bad, for him to speak his mind. I think the manner that he chose is a little shaky for, where he is. And so, but he did it. I actually tweeted. I tweeted a quote tweeted. At first I said, "Uh-oh," but then I came back and thought about it. I was like, well, you just got to do your job and hope that somebody recognizes you, whether it's on this team or somebody else's team. But, I can't say one way or the other about the guys on this roster, man, because I'm just tired, bro. Like our roster is bad. I watch teams around the league every week when we're not playing, and they look like they're running. Like, when you watch something in like 1.5 speed versus regular speed, it looks like the rest of the NFL is playing faster than us. And our guys, like they're stuck in the mud. No matter what surface we're playing on, nobody who touches the ball in Carolina looks special. And every team in this league has at least 1 or 2 guys, when they touch the ball, they look special. Now, we've had that with CMC. We had that with DJ. But right now on this roster, there's nobody scary when they touch the ball. And so if ISM believes he can be that guy, please get him in the roster. But I haven't seen anything that suggests that he's that special yet. I hope that he is, if he gets the opportunity, but I just don't see him being a difference maker like that.
Kevin?
I actually like him tweeting that. One, that's just how the social media time is with players, so I don't really see that being one way or the other. 2, you brought up the point of that it's, quote, being political. Are you bringing players here to be political, or are you bringing players here to win? If ISM is that dog that I've been hearing he is in practice, because, things of that nature, and we're 1-7, Curtis, you hit it right on the head. What the fuck do we got to lose? You know what I'm saying? I get that we're in, I think stat came out, we're in 11 personnel 92% of the time, which is a Sean McVay staple. Personally, I wish we had our personnel groupings done better. I just feel like our talent is grossly misused. That's just my perspective as a fan. I think Tommy Tremble has showed improvement. This year, when he came out and said last year, this is the first year we ever practiced running routes. But back to ISM, if we're getting 60 plays a minimum game, what's wrong with getting him 10 snaps, 10 to 15 snaps? We're not saying that he should, dominate. Let him get a couple of targets, see what he can do. Because, as stated, his tweet is valid. Like I said, from what I've heard, like he's catching everything in practice. And if you want to take it back to whatever stock you want to put in his college film and what he did at Kansas City, he's one of the few guys that I see do get separation, because there's a difference between speed and quickness. He has a lot of quickness. Now, yeah, he has decent speed, but he has quickness. So I can get why there would be some frustration, because we traded for him and a pick swap. So obviously there was enough interest to not, not to let any other team get a chance to pick him up. So at this stage at 1-7, what do you got to lose? Because obviously using the same 3 wide receivers not working. Have we even had a 300-yard passing game yet? I think once at Seattle when Dalton threw it 60 times. So that's more so by volume than anything. I just hope that it's not political. because with Chark, he's on a 1 year, $5 million deal, quote prove it deal. I've only seen him target deep maybe twice, and I know it's more than just going deep, but I just really feel like 80-90% of our plays are like 10 yards and in. It just really feels like instead of letting Bryce Young, rip that bitch, you want to, keep the training wheels on when it doesn't need them. If his processing that y'all were saying that he's elite at, let him go prove it. This game coming up Thursday night would be a perfect example with the shape of the Bears secondary. Air that bitch out. You know what I'm saying? Like let's like when the last time y'all seen us run some 9 routes, like some streaks? When we seen a deep post corner route, and I get the offensive line is which I've been on them about is not a bit, but let's match protect. Let's do some 2-man routes. Like I just saw that last night with the Monday night game. You know what I'm saying? How effective just match protecting 2-man routes is. So
that's what Detroit does. Detroit does that.
Yeah. Detroit has been. We're basically swapped with Detroit. They're playing with a keep pounding type of mentality, strong running game, hardcore defense, and now what I'm saying, we're the pussies. What I'm saying, on the bottom. You know what I'm saying? Lions and Panthers. We done switched the cats around here. So that's essentially what it is, because they will line up. They will use a fullback, something we absolutely have not done. Like even last year, we had Cade Mays in at fullback sometimes, like
running power.
Like
it was beautiful.
That's what I'm saying, man.
Deontay Foreman would have signed that contract we offered him. He ended up going to Chicago,
and we offered him more money than what he got in Chicago, but he didn't want to share the load with Miles Sanders. You know what I'm saying? So
let's talk about the game this week, because that leads me into the end here, and I'll start with JJ. You got to finish this sentence for me. The Panthers will win this game if. Fire away.
If we don't turn the ball over. We're not good enough to overcome turnovers. We can't score enough to overcome getting our team in situations where the defense has to defend a short field, or honestly, the offense just gives up pick six. So if we protect the ball, then we come away from Chicago with a win.
Kevin, the Panthers will win this game if what?
If we let Bryce Young air the ball out. Because as I was stating a moment ago, when you look at the Bears secondary, it's ripe for the plucking. I believe that even with the issues of lack of playmakers at our wide receiver position, that when you look at what the Bears have, and I know they didn't trade Jalen Johnson, did they? The cornerback, I think they kept him, right?
Yeah, they kept him.
Okay, all right. So he may be the one person in our secondary that we have to definitely be careful with, because he was someone I actually used to mock draft to the Panthers back in 20, I think it was 2020 or whatever. I think he's from Utah, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, he's someone that I thought very highly of. But yeah, we'll win this game if we let Bryce be Bryce Young. I'm not saying 20 deep shots, but if we can get anywhere between 7 to 10 good pop shots beyond 15, 20 yards, at least 15 yards or greater, I really think that we can set ourselves up to win this game.
Yeah, I put down if they can run the ball effectively and Bryce Young has no turnovers in the game. I think if Carolina can get to what they kind of had with in against Indy, where I think Hubbard had like 80, right around 90 yards rushing, some impactful runs in here, not some crazy day, but if they can get that run game going, and I agree. I mean, open it up. I said that a couple weeks ago, and I think I tweeted about it too. It's just like, let him play. Let him make the mistakes. Just let him operate this shit. Like, just let him go and run more up tempo. We have not seen that enough. I've been mentioning that a couple times these last couple weeks. Bryce Young seems more comfortable when they're in up-tempo and no-huddle situations. He looks like he's in more command of this team offensively, and I don't see it enough. I mean, I just let that guy work. And if he makes mistakes, he makes mistakes. I mean, this season's lost anyway.
I agree with you. I agree with you because, in my opinion, just based on what I've seen at Bama, and maybe I'm recalling this wrong, but I think the earlier Bryce gets to see the defense, the better he is, right? Because then I think he's determining when to snap the ball. Like when he sees what he sees and he makes his adjustments, I think he has the ability to determine how I'm going to attack the defense. I think somebody said it earlier in one of the games that we played. It might have been after the Minnesota game, where the Vikings were adjusting at the last second because they knew that he couldn't counter that. Like he was getting up to the line of scrimmage. He was seeing it late. They would make their adjustment right at the last second after he has identified what he thought he saw. And then he had no counter for that, right? Because the clock was down to 2 or 1, and then he had to snap it, and then they were coming, right? And he had no solution for those zero blitzes, the way they were calling them. I think if you run up tempo, I think he doesn't even have to snap it, with 10 seconds left on the play clock, but he has that much more time to see what he sees, and then he can make the check, to whatever play he feels that he needs to make the check to. That's actually who I believe that he would be when they picked him up. I thought that's what the processor translated to and why they would pick him over the contemporaries that they didn't pick. The fact that we're not seeing that mind be trusted by the coaching staff, to me, you're robbing him of what makes him special. The other guys that we've been able to see and that we get caught up comparing them to, I think they get to show why they're special, and because it's a physical thing that they can show, right? Throwing ability, running ability. Bryce Young's thing is less about his physical traits and more about what he has between his ears, and they're limiting what that is by kind of confounding him within, the slow-moving offense and not giving him the freedom to operate. And I think he actually has the ability to, and it's sad because he hasn't been able to show that thing that I think fans, we want to see.
All right, I want to end on want to get this real quick. Doesn't have to be long. Just another hypothetical, and I'll start with you, Kevin. If the Panthers lose this game, fill in the blank.
If the Panthers lose this game, they should start playing players for next year just to evaluate.
JJ, I'll let you go after this. I think someone's head's going to roll. I don't know if that's Scott Fitter getting fired, but I think something's going to change because this loss is not only another loss in their cap. This is the team you traded you traded your first round pick this upcoming year to and dished away DJ Moore. And this is almost, and I'm not solidifying yet, but damn near cementing that you're giving the Bears a very, very, very high pick and a worse pick than what they're going to end up with their record. Obviously, things have to play out that way. But, I mean, this is like double whammy if they end up losing this game. And I think that's not going to sit well. And it's also a winnable game for them, just based off of their other scheduling throughout this season. So I just think it's really going to put Tepper over the edge of where he's at. And I think we've seen it before with, certain cuts along the way and with the past regime, whether it's Joe Brady. They fired him late after the bye, and I know that was probably a Matt Rule thing, but I'm sure there was some pressure there as well. But I think there could be a firing of some sort after this game if they end up losing. But anyway, JJ.
Right.
So rephrase your question from the beginning. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Just a hypothetical. If the Panthers lose this game, fill in the blank. What happens?
Since you already stole my thunder about Scott Fitterer, because that's what I'm actually wishing, and I wish I could pray for it, and God take me seriously. But I'm just going to bet that nothing happens. I hope that Scott Fitterer gets fired. But I think it was David Newton, of all people, who intimated this on Twitter yesterday or maybe earlier today. I can't remember now. But he said that he was talking about Frank Wright, but I think it applies to Scott Fitterer too. I think the problem that we got with that happening is Dave Tepper, in having to fire either guy or both, would be admitting for the second time in less than 13 months that he was wrong. And I don't know if the narcissist that he is willing to do that, even if it's the right thing to do. But I don't think anything happens. That's what I'm going to say to answer your question. But I hope that it would lead to a move like Scott Fitterer being fired. I hate to wish a firing on any man in this world, but I think that the Panthers owe it to themselves to allow for a person with a different vision to come in and build this roster around this franchise quarterback.
Kevin, real quick on Scott Fitterer, just your thoughts, because I know that's been a topic of conversation and we really haven't touched on him at all. Just what are your thoughts on him, and do you think he's doing the right job? Is he the right man for the job right now?
As someone that strongly defended Scott Fitterer since he's been here, because once it was found out that former coach, I'm not even going to say his name, had final say on roster decisions, I kind of gave Scott Fitterer a pass, and I said I will only judge him based on the moves that took place in 2023. Well, those moves have led to 1-7. When you look at, the deals that were made and did not get made, when you look at, heck, even our draft picks, that he obviously had something to do with the people that he's brought in. The fact that he's playing games with Brian Burns' contract really probably boils my blood the most. Brian Burns has, played a high level of football, giving us no problems. I mean, I get, and it's not like we're penny pinching the salary cap either, especially when you consider what Montez Sweat just got for playing with the Bears. What he signed for, I think it was like $27 million annual average. But if anybody needs to go after the season, I think it would be Scott Fitterer. I'm just at the point now, he's given me nothing to left to defend him with on that. And a quick note, since we was just talking about it, Curtis, unnecessary bluntness. Duncan, he posted this. He says Bears ranked last in the NFL with only 10 sacks on the season. They are also 19th in pass rush win rate. The Bears are ranked 31st in defensive EPA versus the pass. The Bears have given up a league high 20 touchdown passes. So when you told me what it would take to win this game, what did I say? Let Bryce Young air that bitch out. That, I mean, I just shared his tweet, requoted his tweet or whatever. But, I just think that's the key. And one last thing you was talking about earlier, the first two drives after the Colts game after halftime, I think that was the best the Panthers offense looked all season. Even though the second drive didn't end with the touchdown, but the two drives in the third quarter after halftime, that was the best our offense has looked with running and passing. And Miles Sanders even though he only had 6 carries for 39 yards, he looked like a good running back during those plays. Like all of his runs were.
He was more effective. Absolutely.
All of his runs, all of his carries got at least 4 yards or more. So again, I just think we're better than what our talent shows. So.
All right, let's get a quick prediction for Thursday night. Obviously, the DJ Moore revenge game. It's got blood and guts written all over it. Dante Jackson versus DJ Moore. This is JJ's favorite matchup probably of the week. No, what do you got for a score prediction, JJ?
Panthers 19, Bears 13.
Wow, you're going with a win. All right, Kevin, what do you got?
I'm going to say Carolina 24, Chicago 16.
I'll go Chicago 23, Carolina 17. Carolina drops another one.
You want Fitterer fired. You're a good man.
No, I'll tell you what. I don't have any faith in this team, and I haven't. I've lost all faith. When you can't beat the Colts, man, just brutal. But yeah, hopefully they bounce back. We'll see. I mean, I think Bajent playing versus Fields is going to say a lot. That's obviously up in the air. Still waiting. It sounds like Justin Fields has been limited the last couple of days in practice. But we shall see. It will be interesting. I know Chicago fans really talked a lot of shit this offseason, whether they want to admit it or not. So I said what I said last week. I hope Carolina whoops their ass, but I think it's going to be tough sledding when you don't have your best player, Brian Burns, on the field and you're banged up everywhere else and everything. So it could be a long night and it could be a low-scoring game.
Marquise Haynes,
it could be 7-3. It could be 7-3.
Marquise Haynes is going to have 3 sacks if he plays. Haynes will have 3 sacks.
I sure as hell hope you're right. Well, guys, we want to thank you guys both again for coming on. Kevin, I know it was last minute, but check his page out in their podcast, 4-Man Rush. They do great things over there. You can follow them on Twitter at 4MR Country Cav. I believe that's your handle if I've had that memorized by at this point. We also, JJ Hardy, you guys know him as Panthers Culture. Great follow on Twitter. Just want to thank you guys again for coming on.
No problem, man. Appreciate you having me, as always.
Thanks for the invite.
Just want to thank JJ and Kevin again for coming on and giving us their insight as we head into this Thursday night football game against the Bears. Just want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Panthers On Tap podcast. You can catch our episodes wherever you get your podcasts. Go give us a follow on Twitter at Panthers On Tap for all your analysis and breaking news. And as always,